Hi, my name is Jenna Monahan.
And I'm Olivia Smith, and for our presentation regarding the umbilical cord, we will discuss what it is, how it's developed, its functions, complications that can arise, and how it's a source for stem cell research.
The umbilical cord is the structure that connects the fetus and the placenta. It is what keeps the fetus alive throughout the pregnancy, and it is also known as the connective stalk. The umbilical cord can grow up to 60 centimeters long, which allows ample room for the fetus to grow and move around safely in the uterus. The umbilical cord, although simplistic in structure and function, is more than what meets the fetus.
Here's a photo of a fetus at 53 days post-ovulation. The arrow on the screen is pointing to a distinct intestinal herniation into the proximal umbilical cord. You can also see from the second arrow that the cord is twisted at this stage of fetal development.
The umbilical cord has three separate functions. First, it serves as a blood source for the fetus, which is important since the fetus is unable to breathe independently. Second, it is a source of nutrients for the fetus, including all the calories, proteins, fats, and vitamins that it would need. Lastly, it serves to transport waste products and deoxygenated blood away from the fetus to the maternal circulation. The mother will then process and excrete those wastes.
There's an epithelial layer of stem cells that serves as the outer lining of the umbilical cord. Deep to that, there is what is called the Wharton's jelly, which is a gelatinous substance named after Thomas Wharton in 1956. This jelly protects and insulates the vessels that run through the umbilical cord. There is one large vein that carries oxygenated blood and nutrients to the fetus. Additionally, there are two small arteries that carry depleted blood back to the placenta. The cord enters the fetus through the abdomen and splits into two branches. One goes to the hepatic portal vein in the liver, and the other branch goes to the heart through the inferior vena cava.
This picture here displays all the structures that were just discussed. Around the third week of development, a structure called the allantois is formed. The allantois is a fold of the yolk sac that extends into the connecting stalk, forming part of the umbilicus. At the fifth week of development, the embryo is connected to the placenta by a stalk which is made of umbilical vessels in the allantois. The umbilical cord will form at week 5, replacing the yolk sac as the nutrient source for the embryo. In this picture, you can see the developing fetus surrounded by amnion in the amniotic cavity. Here is the yolk sac and the vitelline vessels, which are essentially just a means of connection and communication between the yolk sac and the gut. Here is the connecting stalk, which is also the umbilical cord, and here's the allantois, which forms the umbilical cord.
It is important to know that there are conditions involving the umbilical cord. To begin with, the umbilical cord can develop abnormally. This happens to approximately 1% of all fetuses in the womb, in which one artery develops instead of two. Having only one artery can lead to cardiovascular problems. In order for efficient exchange of waste and nutrients, two arteries should be present in the umbilical cord. Another condition that is involved with the umbilical cord is that loops of bowel can be found within the proximal portion of the cord. This leads to Meckel's diverticulum, which develops when the vitelline duct is not fully absorbed by the fetus, causing an outpoaching bulge in the lower part of the small intestine. Phoenocytis is an additional condition where neutrophils are being chemotactically activated to migrate out of fetal circulation toward infected amniotic fluid. Finally, the umbilical cord can become knotted. While this does not occur often, the fetus usually dies if it happens. Essentially, when the cord becomes knotted, there could be occlusion of the cord, which leads to lack of circulation.
Subsequently, during the actual process of labor, many complications can arise. One common complication is the prolapse of the umbilical cord. When the cord is especially long, it can deliver prior to the fetus. This not only compresses the umbilical cord, but it can lead to fetal stress and possibly death. A more serious complication that can happen is vasia previa. This is where the cord and vessels grow outside the amniotic sac, which can result in excessive bleeding and oxygen deprivation. It affects 1 in every 2,000 to 3,000 births, and 95% of those babies are stillborn. Furthermore, a condition that is the result of excessive fetal movement can cause the umbilical cord to wrap around the neck of the fetus. This is known as nuchal cord. Fortunately, this rarely needs any intervention, and the birthing process carries along smoothly. With monitoring and a C-section, complications are reduced.
After the mother gives birth, the umbilical cord is usually discarded. It has become more common, however, to draw blood from the umbilical cord to keep for future purposes. There are some advantages to keeping the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord can save lives. It is rich in stem cells that can be used to treat diseases that harm the blood and immune system. With this knowledge, therapies using cord blood have been more successful in recent years. Joanne Kurtzberg, Director of Pediatric Bone Marrow and Stem Cell Production at Duke University, says that outcomes have improved over the past 10 years because researchers and clinicians have learned more about dosing cord blood, picking better matches, and giving the patient supportive care as they go through the transplant. The use of cord blood holds promise for the future medical procedures. Scientists are still pursuing new ways to treat more diseases with this methodology. Finally, your own cord blood will always be accessible. Cord blood banks are reserved for you and your family. They are inaccessible to others and cannot be distributed without your consent.
On the other hand, there are disadvantages to keeping the umbilical cord. Cord blood banking is not cheap. It is free to donate blood to a public bank, but private banking comes at a cost. According to Heather Schott, it can cost anywhere from $1,400 to $2,300 for collecting, testing, and registering, plus an annual $95 to $125 storing fee. There is also the possibility that your child may never need it. There is an estimation of a 1 in 217 chance that your child will ever need a stem cell transplant with cord blood. Successful treatment is also not guaranteed. If your child is born with a genetic condition, the stem cells would have that same condition. Most stored cord blood is discarded. At private banks, stored blood is eventually thrown away if the family does not want to use it. And instead of transferring it to a public bank for universal treatment, it is thrown out.
Umbilical cord blood cell transplantation made its clinical debut in 1988 when it successfully treated a 5-year-old child with Fanconi anemia. Fanconi anemia is a condition that impairs bone marrow function, leading to a decrease in the production of all blood cells. More than 25,000 allogeneic cord blood transplantations have been performed worldwide since 1988. Using blood stem cells from umbilical cords have successfully treated several pediatric blood diseases such as lymphoma, sickle cell anemia, and leukemia. The possibility of storing UCB stem cells is not just an option to potentially use for the person they came from, but also to use on family members.
Science behind UCB stem cell transplantation has been used as an alternative to bone marrow or peripheral blood progenitor cells. It has been found that UCB cells' relative cellular immaturity compared to adult sources suggests a potentially unrivaled degree of plasticity, according to Butler and Minatov from the Journal of Assisted Reproduction and Genetics. What they mean by this is that with primitive umbilical cord stem cells, the adaptability far exceeds that of bone marrow and progenitor cells. UCB contains a large population of hematopoietic stem progenitor cells compared to the adult sources. This is why umbilical cord blood stem cell transplants have been used as an alternative to bone marrow and progenitor cells in older donors. These hematopoietic stem progenitor cells are easily procured. They have a low immunogenic source and have the potential to become any type of cell in the body under certain specific conditions.
In conclusion, The umbilical cord is much more diverse than people generally think it is. Not only is it a lifeline for the developing fetus, but its benefits offer continuous use beyond birth. Even though stem cell research is still experimental, it inspires further research into the treatment of a wide variety of diseases. Enjoy the memes!